day I cut your ear off, I never would have dreamed we'd be spending 6 months together.
Yeah, that is pretty funny.
Chris Klein hopes Heather Graham will marry him, but then he finds out she's his sister in Say It Isn't So, one of 5 new movies we'll review this week. I'm Richard Roeper, columnist for the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times. Our first movie is Say It Isn't So, a comedy produced by the Farrelly brothers, and including such Farrelly trademarks as humor based on bodily functions, social taboos, and animals that have really unfortunate things that happen to them. Heather Graham and Chris Klein fall passionately in love and then discover they're brother and sister. But before that happens, he's invited over for dinner to meet her peculiar family, played by Sally Field and Richard Jenkins.
Excuse me a minute.
Care for a taste of my pie?
Klein works for the animal shelter, and they start dating because he discovers her lost cat. As in all movies produced by the Farrellys, the animals have crucial roles.
Oh, hey, don't go back there. We gotta save some for the honeymoon.
What are you saying, Gilly?
Later, he has an even more unfortunate encounter with a cow. After it's alleged that Klein and Graham are incestuous lovers, she leaves town, and later, he follows her to the Pacific Northwest.
I'm not your brother. Joe! Check out my banner! He wants to marry his sister.
Oh, my God.
Say It Isn't So is not a very funny movie, and I think I know why. Directed by J.B. Rogers, it depends on the Farrelly trademark of bizarre embarrassment, but the characters, played by Chris Klein and Heather Graham, are so clueless they're more like bystanders than victims. Half the time they don't even know they're embarrassed. Some of the sight gags, like when she cuts off part of his ear, are edited in the wrong way, so we cringe at the knife going into the flesh instead of laughing. It would have been funnier if she cut off his whole ear and he'd gone through the rest of the movie, never letting us see that side of his face, in my opinion.
That's a bigger laugh than I got out of this movie. You know, at one point I was wondering, is that the real actor's arm and a fake cow, or a fake arm and the real cow? Because you're looking at stuff like that, it's more interesting than the movie itself. And at least the cats and the cows and the birds in movies like this have an excuse. They really can't read scripts. What's the actor's excuse? Because why would you want to sign on to this project? You're right, it's the Farrelly brothers' trademark stuff, but they forget that there's got to be something behind it. Gross out for the sake of gross out is just like we're looking at a garbage dumpster for an hour and a half.
You know, it goes to show you that when they're right, they are so very right, and when they're wrong, it doesn't work, and there's such a fine line, because basically the same kind of rude, crude, vulgar humor works in There's Something About Mary or Kingpin, and it doesn't work here, and you can see that the same elements have gone in. It's like some cakes rise, you know.
And some don't, not at all. We'll make quite a bit of a different type of film here with wit. Our next movie, it's riveting, it's unforgettable. It's directed by Mike Nichols, and it stars Emma Thompson in a truly amazing performance as Dr. Vivian Baring, a middle-aged professor of poetry facing ovarian cancer. Thompson and Nichols have done a superb job of adapting the Pulitzer Prize-winning play by Margaret Edson, infusing it with effective and insightful flashbacks without forfeiting any of the intensity of Vivian's current ordeal. Most of the story, however, takes place within the cold and sterile walls of a bustling public hospital. Christopher Lloyd plays the doctor who explains her condition.
The tumor is spreading very quickly, and this treatment is very aggressive. So far, so good?
Yes.
Better not teach next semester.
Out of the question.
The first week of each cycle, you'll be hospitalized for chemotherapy. The next week, you may feel a little tired. The next 2 weeks will be fine, relatively.
It's eight months like that.
This treatment is the strongest thing we have to offer you. And as research, it'll make a significant contribution to our knowledge.
Jonathan M. Woodward is excellent as Jason, a brilliant but socially challenged intern who happens to be a former student of Vivian's.
Let's just get started. How are you feeling today?
Fine, thank you.
Excellent. And how's your general health?
Fine.
Good. Now, we know that you're an academic.
Yes, we've established that.
So we don't need to talk about your interesting work.
No.
There's a scene where Jason gives Vivian a pelvic exam that's so painfully and perfectly executed that we almost have to turn away. Much of wit is like that, painfully accurate in portraying the mundane horror of being a cancer patient. Vivian envelops us in her struggles, often addressing the camera directly. Thus, we can feel her agony and her humiliation as she finds herself turned into a human guinea pig for research-obsessed doctors. Yet, despite this intense subject matter, there are also moments of great humor. Wit is playing on HBO and thus won't be eligible for Academy Award consideration, but Emma Thompson's performance is certain to rival anything done by any actor in any medium this year.
It certainly is, and Mike Nichols does a great job here. This movie is going on my list of the best 10 films of the year, and I don't care if it didn't play in theaters because it's good. And I think we have to thank cable that occasionally they can show a movie like this that might not go into theaters because it's too serious, it's too unremitting, it's too bleak, and yet at the same time it's so great. And there's a nurse in the movie played by Audra McDonald who really is defending this sick, dying woman against the depredations of modern medicine and its heartlessness. And there's a moment when she gets physical. There's a moment when she leans across Emma Thompson's body like this, and she's going to take on that doctor if he tries to touch her. And I'm telling you, that moment and other moments in this movie...
your heart is in your throat when that is happening.
Really,
you can just really feel that.
It reminded me how strong movies can be.
And you're right, it is a movie. It's not a made-for-TV flick or, oh, it had to go straight to cable. It doesn't really matter what the medium is when something is this excellent from start to finish.
And it is so merciless in showing how cruel this environment is, how people, the doctors who come in, are looking at her as if she's a piece of meat.
Yeah, this great professor of poetry who was, who was almost a legend on her college campus, and now she's just out in the hallways of this cold hospital, just like every other patient, with literally no dignity left.
She spent her entire career reading between the lines of John Donne, and now she has to read between the lines of what the doctors are saying.
Exactly.
It's a great movie. Coming up later, Pierce Brosnan and Jeffrey Rush in the John le Carré spy movie, The Tailor of Panama.
Casablanca without heroes.
Coming up next, Morris Chestnut and D.L. Hughley in The Brothers.
From this moment forward, I'm a one-woman man.
Come on, man, you always in your drawers. Get dressed.
All right, man, just let me get out this suit. I'll be on. No, you gotta get a maid.
For real?
Hey, I had one. It didn't work out. You had sex with it, didn't you?
Longtime friends Morris Chestnut and Shamar Moore despair of Bill Bellamy's bachelor pad in The Brothers in that scene, a comedy about romantic commitments and romantic evasions. The fourth member of their crowd, played by D.L. Hughley, is married but not happily, and the others are highly eligible young professional men who value their freedom to play the field. They feel threatened when Moore announces that he, too, is about to tie the knot.
Come on, Terry, after just 2 months of dating, I mean, that got to be some kind of record for being whipped.
Oh, wait a minute.
I know you're not talking about being whipped.
Hey, come on, Terry. We know you, man. You can't change. I mean, what about when you was talking to the girl and her mom, and then they both found out?
Right.
I remember that.
Then love strikes again. Morris Chestnut, as a pediatrician, meets a feisty photographer played by Gabriel Union.
An artist. I like that. What does your boyfriend think about you being an artist?
That's smooth, but I don't have a boyfriend.
The Brothers has a contrived subplot about what D.L. Hughley's wife won't do in bed, and that doesn't work, but it has good stuff, too, especially the courtship between Morris Chestnut and Gabriel Union. He discovers a secret about her past that disturbs him, although it shouldn't. And, you know, in too many movies, that would generate an idiot plot where everybody says the wrong things for the wrong reasons, but instead, Union has strong dialogue to tell this guy why he's wrong, and we sense that she's fighting for their future happiness. Makes you realize how often in the movies nobody talks like that because it would make too much sense. For that relationship and for some good laughs, a marginal thumbs up for The Brothers.
Well, I'm giving it thumbs down because I don't believe any of these couples would have ended up together, including the parents who get back together. I don't want to give away too much here, but you know, this is the kind of movie where a lot of people are going to end up back together, and I believe the problems they have in their relationships are too big to overcome, so I didn't believe it. And can we put a stop to movies that end with a big zoom on the wedding scene and we think it's one couple, but it turns out to be yet another couple from the movie? I mean, how many times have we seen that?
100% of the time, it's never the couple getting married that you think is getting married. But, you know, to me, it was almost like Morris Chestnut and Gabriel Union and his parents were in a different movie. They had a better storyline, they had better dialogue, they had better scenes, they had better direction, and the other subplots were all kind of off the shelf or second rate.
A lot of broad comedy with the other
because,
ones,
you know, Gabriel Union was the best thing in Bring It On, and now she's good here, too. She's good with him. So, as I say, marginal.
It's close. There's too many scenes, too, of these guys dribbling around and talking about their relationships.
Oh, dribbling, of course, because all buddy movies, they always play basketball.
They never play basketball. They just talk while they're dribbling.
Always starts at the basketball.
Shoot the ball once in a while.
Starts with basketball, ends with a wedding. Coming up next, Oscar nominee Jeffrey Rush stages an elaborate con as the Tailor of Panama.
We're talking $10 million, Andy.
$10 million?
Yeah.
You were Noriega's tailor, weren't you, in his time?
I'm sorry, sir. Is that a problem?
Not necessarily.
Jeffrey Rush is a Cockney tailor who knows all the players, and Pierce Brosnan is a secret agent with the charm of James Bond, but the ethics of Peter Lorre in The Tailor of Panama, based on the novel by John le Carré. Brosnan has great fun lampooning his Bond persona as Andy Osnard, a womanizing, morally bankrupt agent who's been demoted to Panama. But Andy soon cultivates a relationship with the mysterious Harry Pendle, who always knows which way the political winds are blowing.
He's selling it, Andy.
What?
The canal.
He's selling it?
Has to. Needs the money. Relieve the poverty. Infrastructure.
Who's buying?
Andy doesn't care about the betterment of mankind. He wants information he can sell to various interested parties. Jamie Lee Curtis plays Harry's wife, who is worried about the games Andy is playing with her husband.
Are you talking about spying?
Oh, that's much too, heavy a word for what Harry's doing.
When he's not running multinational scams, Andy's coming on to every woman in sight, including an icy British diplomat played by Catherine McCormick.
Full-on affair now. Observing tight security all round. See how we like it. If we don't, chuck it in. No one's the wiser.
I don't suppose it's occurred to you that I might hugely prefer someone else.
Is that a no?
Harry's right. Panama is no Casablanca, and Andy Osnard doesn't have Rick Blaine's reluctant nobility. He's a heartless, manipulative scoundrel, and it's a gutsy performance by Brosnan, who never steps outside of the character to give us one of those reassuring star winks. The Tailor of Panama is a meandering, sometimes confusing adult spy game, but it's much more satisfying than yet another cartoonish stunt show with secret agents flying around on jetpacks or breaking into airtight banks. These characters are hugely flawed, and when they make mistakes, things often get very messy. That's what keeps our interest throughout. The Tailor of Panama is an inspired and original piece of work.
I loved it. It made me think of some of Graham Greene's novels as well as John le Carré's work. And it is meandering, but that's because they're meandering since they don't know where they're going. It's not one of these movies where the guy comes in with a plan or the tailor has a plan. Both of them realize that the other one represents opportunities. They see each other, and both guys see dollar signs and figure, how can I manipulate this guy? What can I tell him that will benefit me? And they kind of work out the scam together without ever admitting it to each other. And it's really kind of, you know, dishonest and manipulative, and at the same time...
They're both playing, you know, both ends against the middle and kind of feeling each other out. But it's not just this lighthearted romp where now they got this big scam going and they're going to be buddies walking off into the sunset, because some of their mistakes result in death for some of the characters that we care about. So really well done, and kind of a surprising mix the way it goes back and forth, and great acting from this interesting cast.
You're right. This movie deserves the Jean le Carré book. I mean, he writes really involved books, and usually they simplify them. This one is... a good one. Our next movie demonstrates, as well as any movie I've ever seen, how the new digital cameras liberate filmmakers to follow their whims and instincts and noses. It's called The Gleaners and I, and it's by Agnes Varda, the legendary and beloved French director who alternates serious features like Vagabond and Kung Fu Master with personal documentaries about her uncle or her neighbors and friends. Here she gets a new video camera and begins by filming gleaners, people who go through fields after the harvest, picking over leftover crops that are still good enough to eat.
Je me suis approchée de lui et je lui ai demandé combien il y en avait, à son avis.
Il y a pas loin d'une tonne, là. En prenant tous les tas, il y a pas loin d'une tonne. De terre gâchée.
Gleaning is a right protected by the French Constitution, although many French people don't know that, including poor people who could probably use that knowledge. The right extends to gleaners who work the streets of Paris searching for treasure after a street market or in the garbage.
Des fois, vraiment, c'est de la bonne charcuterie. Des fois, c'est de la volaille. Des fois, c'est un peu de tout.
Également, il a récupéré du poulet et tout.
The lightweight camera allows Varda to investigate unexpected leads.
Je suis dans un foyer, ça n'accote pas. 50% des personnes sont illettrées. Ce sont des personnes d'origine étrangère, malienne, sénégalaise essentiellement. Moi, je suis arrivé dans ce foyer il y a 8 ans et je donne des cours d'alphabétisation depuis 6 ans. Moi, je ne suis pas le système scolaire. Je suis indépendante puisque je suis bénévole.
And there's another level in The Gleaners and I involving Agnes Varda herself. She's 72. She senses her own mortality. She's a gleaner, too. If gleaners look for leftover food, she looks for leftover people. If they find potatoes and cabbages that are good to eat, she finds gleaners that are good to meet, and she values their lives and the service they perform for society. In North America, we call people like them scavengers, but gleaners is a better word for people who find a use for what society throws out. The Gleaners and I starts out like a factual documentary and then becomes surprisingly profound, poetic, and moving.
And truly enjoyable from start to finish. Agnes Varda, you mentioned she's 72 years old, but she's got this childlike curiosity, not just about Gleaners, but about her camera, about, you know, the things she sees on the ground, the things she sees in the sky, trucks that pass her by, and she brings us into that. And I knew this much about gleaning going into this movie. Now I feel like I have a doctorate in gleanology, because she illustrates that all throughout France there's this gleaning going on at different levels of society, and it's given a certain measure of dignity by the laws of France and by the respect the people who own the property actually have for the gleaners themselves. They're like, yeah, that's okay, let them come in after we're done harvesting our land.
You know, you're right in talking about how youthful she is, because she's just like a kid with a new camera.
Yeah.
I mean, she starts out this movie without a script, without a plan. She takes the camera and she starts shooting, and it leads to this stuff. And you know, 9 people out of 10 or 99 people out of 100 given a camera are going to come up with something boring. But because she is a natural filmmaker and a gifted filmmaker, her eye and her instincts lead her to just the right stuff, and you just kind of sit there in awe.
It's a new instrument for her genius. Okay, coming up next, it's NCAA season, and college basketball is the subject of my video pick of the week.
Come on, Kevin, you gotta get on him!
Ebert and Roeper's Video Pick of the Week is brought to you by Nestle Raisinets. Try Raisinets in new, convenient, resealable bags.
March Madness means it's showcase time for NCAA basketball, but we all know there's a lot more to big-time college hoops than buzzer beaters and office pools. This dark side is explored to great effect in Blue Chips, a 1994 release starring Nick Nolte as a Bobby Knight-like coach at a fictional university in the West who's the king of his campus as long as his squad keeps racking up those 20-victory seasons. Nolte's latest roster of prize recruits includes 2 already familiar young faces who went on to become household names, Penny Hardaway and Shaquille O'Neal. Here, Nolte visits Hardaway's family in Chicago to make his recruiting pitch.
I don't know, Coach. I'll think about it. I'm kind of scared to take the college courses.
It's normal, Butch. I mean, Dr. George Howe, the head of our science department, he's world famous. He loves basketball.
Now, are you implying that class is a rigged athlete?
Ed O'Neill does a nice job as a sports writer who's not afraid to ask the tough questions. And the late, great character actor J.T. Walsh shines as a corrupt booster. At a post-game press conference, O'Neill asks Nolte about an investigation into recruiting violations.
I got to ask this question or I wouldn't be doing my job. Would you care to comment on the rumor that you arranged for an automobile to be purchased for Neon Vidal?
Blue Chips was directed by William Friedkin from a script by Ron Shelton. The actors feel authentic as basketball players, and more impressively, the real-life basketballers and coaches are credible actors. Watching the charm and the humor of the young O'Neill here makes you wonder how he came to be such a sullen and disappointing public personality despite his on-court greatness. Anchored by Nolte in one of his finest performances, Blue Chips also features some of the best basketball sequences ever filmed, and it's my video pick of the week.
Now let's take another look at the movies we reviewed on this week's show. 2 thumbs down for the gross and unfunny Say It Isn't So. But 2 enormously admiring thumbs up for Mike Nichols' Wit and its great performance by Emma Thompson. It premieres this weekend on HBO and plays through April. A split vote for The Brothers. I sort of liked it. Richard sort of didn't. 2 thumbs up for John Borman's stylish spy story, The Tailor of Panama. It opens next week. And finally, 2 big thumbs up for Agnes Varda's wonderful documentary, The Gleaners and I. And Wit is a very, very special movie.
If you don't have HBO, find somebody who does have it and invite yourself over. So you really don't want to miss this.
Yeah.
Not at all. Okay, remember you can hear our reviews at ebert-roper-movies.com and read us in print at suntimes.com.
And you can find out about my 3rd annual Overlook Film Festival at ebertfest.com.
Next week, more new movies, including Someone Like You, a romantic comedy starring Ashley Judd, Greg Kinnear, and Hugh Jackman, and also Spy Kids, an adventure comedy starring Antonio Banderas and Terry Hatcher. That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.